Hey, everyone, welcome back. I am super stoked to introduce you to my friend Melissa Nanavati. She is a speaker, an author, and a relationship architect. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a true honor to join you on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm stoked about this conversation. So, first and foremost, everybody knows what a speaker is, everybody knows what an author is. What do you consider a relationship architect?
For me, a relationship architect is all about providing the blueprint or the framework that specifically high performers can follow to really build a successful relationship while chasing big goals. Because I think that's one of the things that is missing. We get a lot of information about relationships, which is fantastic, but very few actually talking about how do we operationalize this? How do we apply the skills that made us really successful in business now to our relationship so that it can operate as more of like I would say the fuel for your success versus a deterrent.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you are totally speaking my language first and foremost because I'm all for the high performance stuff. And in the context of relationship, that can be, as you're alluding to, so difficult because those of us that are high performers, we're very focused, we're very driven, we're very like, this is my path and my goals and duh. And then when somebody else enters that picture, it's like, oh, hold on. So I'm fascinated about that this is what you do because my husband and I like we're all into this because that was our world. So I would love to hear a little bit of your entrepreneurial journey. Like how did you get into that? How'd you get started? Like what transpired to have you doing what you're doing now?
Well, I love to say I was always the relationship coach for my friends as a single person. I was
Gotcha.
the person that everybody came to, and my background is actually more in the marketing space. I actually authored the first college textbook on social media marketing back in 2012.
Are you serious?
A weird path in, but I'm like a researcher at heart. And so I love frameworks. And I think that that research nature, so for anybody listening, if you don't know, in textbook authoring, everything you include in the book has to have a citation. You can't make anything up. You can't just have opinions without having evidence and research. So that's how my brain is really wired, I would say. I'm very much a researcher first. And then over the course of about 13 years working in the marketing space, I was actually a ghostwriter for a long time for a lot of executives.
Oh, nice.
To know their kind of intimate relationships and became very close to them and became fascinated with their relationships and those of them that were amazing parents, amazing leaders, and what were they doing differently. So I've been studying this for, I would say, a good 13, 15 years. And then over the last few years, as soon as I got into my relationship, my husband is Akshay Nanavati, and he is a polar adventurer and explorer. And part of that being in a relationship with him from the very beginning, I would say about the third week of our relationship, I was getting asked to come on stage at his events and explain how we were making it work. Because he would go on these extreme adventures, and there was so much curiosity of how do you make that work?
He's going to be on this show as well. And maybe I'm going to put both of your episodes out on the same day because I think that that's a very valid point. Like maybe just give a little more hint. Obviously, we'll hear his story from him, but like it's an extreme situation that he created for himself. Just give
Absolutely.
us a little hint of what that is, and then let's dig into more like how you navigate with and around that.
Absolutely. So, what he was attempting to do and had been training for about 4 years, so 2 years or 2 or 3 years before we even met, he was training to be the first person to ski solo, coast to coast across Antarctica, which, if any of you don't know, that's the South Pole. It's the most inhospitable place on Earth. It gets into negative 30, 40 degrees. And he had been directly training for this for 4 years. And when we met, he basically asked me on our second date. At the time he was scheduled to go that year, he said, "Will you be with me for the next 7 months? Because I don't want to date somebody if they're going to break up with me while I'm on this intense expedition, solo skiing, bringing all of his supplies across the continent and satellite phone call home. The last thing you need in that scenario is your partner
We need to talk.
emotional breakdown. Yes, exactly. So we really had to dive deep early. And there was a beauty to that because we ended up getting to know each other and very quickly. So he actually proposed after 2 months of us dating. And at that time, we had talked about everything finances, kids, life plans, and got in alignment very, very quickly. And I don't think that that's uncommon for high performers in general. When you have big
And
goals,
when you know, like
right?
the right fit,
Exactly.
it's just that works.
Totally. And so that's where we were getting a lot of questions of at the time he was also fundraising $1.1 million in our first year of marriage. We traveled 80% of the year for his training and we spent 4 months apart. So we were in a pressure cooker. And this was an area that I'd actually struggled in a lot and what ultimately led me to make this my life's work because I had gone on over 100 first dates before I met my husband.
Okay. Okay. That's like that's a little shocking to me. Not, I mean, not about you, but so I'm a super, super introvert, big time hermit.
Introvert. Introvert.
I
Yeah.
don't do dates really. So that to me is like blowing my mind a little bit. I mean, okay, so was that all in like seeking your best fit, or was it just like I'm just having fun, I just want to date around, whatever, but like how do you even do that?
I would say I'm a serial monogamous. Like my goal was always dating for marriage.
Okay.
And I had a couple of long-term relationships very early in life and then ended up going on, if you go on, I would say even like 12 dates a year for 10 years,
Like,
you're going to end up at 100. So it was not that I was condensing it all in this time. And I would go through phases where I'd be discouraged, but I really figured out that dating is going to be different when you're so goal driven and you're going to scare off a lot of people. You're also going to be more discerning. And so it was through that process of my own exploration, reading every book I could get my hands on as a researcher when it comes to
yes.
relationships and finding that there was a real gap in what it means to date as a high performer and also building some acceptance around the idea that you can go deep early. And so that's really why this became my life's work because this was such a pain point for me. You don't spend roughly 10 years single and go on over 100 first dates if you aren't really looking for your partner. At some point, it's not fun. And, there was a big reframe for me that I had to make in dating and seeing it as practice and seeing it as reps towards the relationship that I wanted. And that's what allowed me to really continue dating so frequently, so often, looking for the right fit.
Oh my gosh, I freaking love this so much because my whole thing is like, what are you here to do? What's your reason for being? What is your purpose? And that's it so many times is when we can come from that pain point in our life. For me, it was money. It wasn't relationships, like it was financial for sure. But for you to then go through that whole, which to me sounds very, very extreme.
In its own right.
Honestly, to me, that sounds just as extreme as Akshay's trek across Antarctica. Like, that's how extreme that is to me. So to come from that and say, oh, this is my mission now, this is my purpose now, and all the different pieces of the puzzle, the pain, the joy, the everything you can pour into that to then help people figure out what it is they can do to make that maybe an easier path. I absolutely love this. So let's talk about that a little bit because I know there are a lot of high performers that listen to this very show. How do you even get started when it's like, I am so goal driven and focused, and then here's this other person?
The biggest thing is operationalizing things. And it
Oh,
doesn't sound sexy
no,
to
it doesn't, but that's why I like it.
but exactly.
Like it sounds like something that's doable.
It totally. And that's the thing is breaking it down into what is the end goal. So if your goal is you're single, you're a high performer, you realize I really want a partner. It's setting aside time every week to either be in a new space, to meet people, but it's really blocking it into your calendar. And same thing when you're in a relationship. So it doesn't matter how busy you are, and I experienced this firsthand. I told Akshay, here are the things that make me feel loved, right? Buying flowers once a week. Very small, very big point of leverage for me. So he puts it on his calendar.
Oh,
Quality
awesome.
time, we put it on our calendar. He also needs alone time as somebody who enjoys being in solitude. So we have those discussions are really proactive about operationalizing everything. And the same thing with dating. And I would say to jump a step back, if you are looking and single, it starts with getting crystal clear on what are just your top 3 to 5 values that you need to share with the person you're going to be with. And getting that level of clarity will allow you to be very discerning in the dating process and quickly assess if someone's a good match or not.
It's so true. And I don't know what your belief system is, but I think it even goes beyond that. Like, once you're so clear, that's when that co-creation with life or with the universe or with whatever you want to call it starts to crystallize and actually happen. So I'll give you a quick story on this because it's so freaking hilarious and literal. So we've met in real life, so you know I'm not a very tall person. And I had always, earlier in my life, I had dated a lot of like really, really big guys, tall guys. And I was like, yeah, I don't really love that because they're like so much
My neck
bigger than
hurts.
me.
This is rough.
Exactly. Like I'd have to stand on a stair, you know, to like, kiss them. And I'm like, that's not really my thing. So I had written in this whole list of things that I was looking for, I wanted the guy to be less than 5'8". Now, I did not put a minimum on
Mhm.
that. I just said less than 5'8". As it turned out, my husband was 3 feet tall in a wheelchair. So, like, he was less than 5'8" in the most kind of hilarious, shocking, literal way. But that's like, I had that clarity. And so then, as you said, it's easier to recognize them when that person shows up because they have, like you said, the values, the different things. And then when you can just see that and it clicks in with what you're already intending, ah, it's you. Okay, let's go.
Absolutely. I love that story. And
It's just so ridiculous because I
yeah,
like I didn't have a minimum. I'm like just less than 5'8". Well, he was.
I absolutely love that. And similarly, Akshay and I actually had both made lists of all the qualities we wanted a partner before we met. When we looked at each other's lists, and they'd been made years before we met,
Yeah,
we were 100% of each other's lists.
I
One
love
of them,
that.
the very bizarre one was, what if I could date somebody who's also sober, an author, and a speaker? Very specific, unlikely to find. He was all of those things.
Mm, that's so so cool. I think the only ones that were like really off for me and Sean, he wanted to date some like Latina chick, and I was obviously not that. And I always thought that a British accent or some kind of accent like that was like really, really sexy. So he didn't have that. But we were like, you know what? We can deal without those things. The rest, like all were in alignment. So we're good.
And I would say too is not to get too hung up on the uber superficial ones like that. You can have preferences. Everybody has
Right.
preferences, but if you are too rigid with those things, that's where I think you run into trouble. So for example, Akshay is Indian and I am half Chinese and we have never dated each other's ethnicities before. And so if we'd got stuck on this is what I've dated before, this is the archetype, then I think you run into trouble. And that's why I always say focusing on values, character values, and lifestyle values. So, are
Hmm.
you someone that enjoys travel? What does your actual day-to-day look like? Do you enjoy banter? And those little things that are seemingly small actually compound over time. That's how you engage with the person every day. So, if you aren't clear on those, then you might end up with somebody who has a lot of habits that drive you a little bananas.
Right. Which you might end up with that anyway.
Yes, and you still will. But some things you can work with and others you can't. So knowing what those deal breakers are too and having that clarity, I think is really powerful.
Totally. Those non-negotiables are so, so crucial. So I want to ask you how, like, what does normal life look for? I mean, he's not in Antarctica now,
Not presently,
so
no.
not currently. What does like a typical day or week look like in your life running these various businesses and all the different things that you guys are doing?
So we actually do two things somewhat in parallel, and we're working together, but we don't both do a lot of speaking, writing. We're both working on a book jointly together, and
Oh,
then he's
nice.
working on one independently about his journey that he just returned from. And we honestly have to work to not be in the same space all day long because we both work from home. So we have our independent little offices, and he is often just on the Stairmaster, taking all of his calls as an endurance athlete does. And we
Of
have a
course.
very quirky day-to-day life. It's funny because in the day-to-day, I actually feel like I get outside more than he does. So I
Wow.
go for my morning walks, I get out, I like running errands because otherwise I start to feel like we've been home for a long time because most of our relationship for the first year and a half was traveling. We spent 3 months in Alaska in a tiny cabin so he could ski every day. We spent 2 months in Norway, a month in Iceland. We were everywhere but here. So we're actually building our new normal, which has been really fun because he's only been back about 4 months.
With that, I want to move into this framework that I like to ask every guest. And what it allows us as, your audience right now is to learn a little bit about how all this stuff works. And we started just alluding to it with like your day-to-day life. But this framework is based around an acronym called HERB, H-E-R-B. And I'll walk you through step by step. And I just would love to hear what your thoughts are and like how you make all this stuff work. So the H in HERB stands for habits. And you
Mhm.
mentioned a couple already, like your daily walk, doing errands, but what are some of the maybe non-negotiable habits that you're like, this is going to happen so that you can be as productive and high performing as you are?
Love that question. So, I am a very big habit person when it comes to my personal habits that help fill me up, as well as relational habits. For me, my morning non negotiables are my gratitude list. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for every single morning, and then diving into a lot of biohacking. I love
Nice.
all of the health related things, including red light therapy. So, I'll do my red light therapy in the morning, drink my morning coffee with all of the different tinctures that I put in there, mushroom extracts, whatever that may be, not magic mushrooms for the record. These are the
Hey, those are good too.
those are good too. No, no judgment, but that's not my shtick. It would definitely be lion's mane, cordyceps, chaga, all the longevity things, and then going for my morning walk. And that's usually when I connect with a friend or my mom, giving a call to family members and just using that time productively. And then from there, diving into the day. But at the end of the day, the rituals are a little different. They're all relational.
Mm.
Akshay and I do a check-in every single night where we express gratitude for everything the other person did for us that day. And if we missed anything, we ask the other person, what can I acknowledge you for today?
I love that. I love that. Like
Because it
what
orients you, right? It orients you to the positive, all the things your partner is doing. And so many of us are unseen and under acknowledged.
and just busy, like maybe unfocused on those particular things. So having that as a practice, I absolutely love that so much because then it pulls that into focus and it's like, oh wait, let me think about even if I had a crazy day or if, even if I was doing whatever else, as we often are, I have that moment to just really focus in on that. And that's amazing. I so love that.
Thank you. And, there's a lot of other habits I have during the day about like workouts and different things that are non-negotiable, but those are the ones that actually fill my cup. And
Yeah.
they fill our relational cup. And the other thing we do, and this is more on a weekly basis, but we'll check in and look at the whole calendar for the week with each other and say, all right, what day is date night? Because we do one new date every single week, non-negotiable, at least.
Nice.
And so having that new experience, because there's 2 real reasons that ultimately marriages fall apart. And a lot of research shows that it has to do with a lack of novelty and a lack of feeling desired. Those are also the
Mhm.
2 reasons people cheat, unfortunately. And so we really operationalize baking those into our everyday life. So we have a new experience with each other every single week, whether it's a restaurant, food, new movie, whatever it may be. And then that expression of gratitude is key for both of us to feel desired and loved.
Yeah. What are some of if you can give an example maybe or two of what are some of maybe the more unique dates that you guys have done? I just always love to pick people's brains about this because a lot of people, they don't get very creative about that. Oh, well, I guess I will go out to dinner. Oh, I guess we'll go see a movie. And those are great. But I think there's other fun things that you can do as well. Were there any like unique things that come to mind?
We went to a magic show. He has
Love
a
it.
whole tab of research. And so a lot of ours surround around entertainment and then visiting new places. So we don't often go to a new place every weekend. That would be a lot. However, we are planning to go to Clear Sky Resorts up in the Grand Canyon, which is these domes that you can see all the stars at night. So
Oh, beautiful.
really about having these kind of new experiences. He's also looked up cooking classes. We have done dance classes together, and it's a mix of things that we both enjoy. And he's taken me on some disastrously hard hikes because that's his language is making me suffer.
I love that. So, you mentioned a little bit of this already, but the E is environment. So you talked about you both having your own space in your home so you can, make it the way that you want. But let's talk about your environment. What sets you up to win the most in terms of your physical space?
I love a lot of natural light. So there's backlight here, but all my office has all these windows. And I love having little affirmations around. One of them on my calendar that's like right above my monitor, which is why you're seeing me look up, is says receive fully. And there's a lot of different little mantras that I keep around in my space. Air purifier, I have bamboo. I'm big into feng shui. I actually had a master feng shui consultant come through my home and give recommendations, and I followed all of it to a T. So I don't
Love
claim to
it.
be a designer, but I can follow some really good instructions.
Totally. So you've got like you're looking at your door, you're in your power position, all of that stuff. I love that stuff too. So,
And funny enough, that's the polar opposite of my husband.
oh yeah.
Akshay has all of his windows shut, likes to be in the dark under a weighted blanket with headphones and a snuggy blanket. And he's the great explorer.
This is what's so great about interviewing you both because I'll get all those little details that he's probably not going to tell me in his interview.
He may. He's pretty confident in
Oh,
sharing.
that's so good.
He
I'll be
loves
like, so what about that Snuggie blanket that you use in your office?
he looks absurdly comfortable when he's not suffering immensely. So he does extremes in every way.
Just contrast, I guess.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so that brings us to the R in herb, and this is my favorite one. I think it might be your favorite one too, as a researcher, because I'm assuming that you have a great love affair with books, as I do. Okay, so R is resources, and that could be, it could be books, it could be programs, it could be coaches, it could be whatever, any type of resource. But I'd love, based on all of your experience, if you could pick out maybe a few different resources that have really either moved the needle for you, shifted your thinking, your mental paradigm, something that was like really powerful for you in your life and that you might recommend to our audience.
I love this question.
Me
Big
too.
resources,
I'm
yes.
always like stoked for whatever anybody's going to say because I'm like, ooh, yeah, either I need to read that book or I've read that book or let's like, yes.
I love books. I also love podcasts. And there has been one podcast that has been massively instrumental in my life. And I can even share the story. It's the reason Akshay and I are together now.
Oh, please tell the
Yeah.
story.
The Human Upgrade by Dave Asprey.
Okay. Which is like indirectly kind of how you and I met, sort of like,
Exactly. Yes, it's all weaved in very magically. About 7 years ago, I started listening to his podcast when it was still Bulletproof Radio.
okay.
It was the first podcast I really discovered where people were talking about health and longevity, and it was just after I quit drinking. So it gave
Wow.
me an instant sense of community. And it was on his podcast, I heard about his program called 40 Years of Zen. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Did you do it?
I did it twice.
Oh, I have not done it yet, but it's like been on my list to do
I
for
will make the
years.
email intro for you. I have sent so many people there. It not only changed my life in terms of my own mental patterns. So what it is a neurofeedback retreat, 5 days. They say it's the equivalent of doing 40 years of meditation in 5 days, which is why they call it 40 years of Zen.
So cool.
You're hooked up to electrodes, you're hearing your brainwaves back in real time, you have the headphones on, so you're working in a brainwave state where you can actually make new neural connections, which is the alpha brainwave state. So the first time I went in, it was clear out the baggage, work through all of my old baggage, trauma, any of that, all capital T and little t trauma. And then the second time I went in, I went with the very specific intention of working through my anxious attachment so that I could better connect with a future partner.
Mm.
And in that second round, on the last day, we were doing work in gamma, which is the brainwave state that's higher in frequency even than high beta, where people tend to have these aha moments, the Kundalini awakenings, everything you hear about in spirituality. So I had a vision on the last day that was so real of my future partnership. There was palm trees where it was that I ended up breaking my lease of 12 years in Portland, Oregon, and moving on pure intuition to Scottsdale, Arizona, and told everyone that my future husband was there.
This is giving me chills. I freaking love it.
It almost sounds made up when I say it every single time. I actually just told the story on Dave Asprey's podcast. We were
Ah,
just on last month, and beyond that, he played a role in two ways. So first I had the vision, and then when I was first getting to know Akshay, he had mentioned that he had been on the Human Upgrade podcast. So I went to go listen to that episode, and I heard him say that he was more afraid, as a Marine veteran, by the way, of asking a woman on a date than going to war. And because I heard that, I ultimately asked him on our first date. Had I not heard that,
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't know if we would be together today.
Wow. Melissa, that is so awesome in so many ways. And there's so many other things that I want to ask you about now because I moved to Portland, Oregon on kind of a hunch like that. I had a full, real, like big career in Michigan,
Whoa.
moved across the country to start my coaching business and go to grad school. And I knew it had to be in Oregon and I moved to Portland. That's like,
I've got full body chills. That's
wait, when were you in Portland? Maybe we were there at the same time. When did you live there?
I was there from 2011 to 2022.
Oh, we just missed each other. I was there a little bit before that, but oh my gosh, how cool.
Unreal.
Oh. And now you guys live in Scottsdale. We had moved from Chicago to Scottsdale. Like there's so many beautiful connections. Okay, what other resources? I do obviously love all the Dave Asprey stuff, but what else you got?
I think some of my other favorite work that I've read has been by Hal Elrod. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
I
Hal.
I know Hal.
No, Hal. The Miracle Morning was a
Yes.
big, big game changer for me, and I've taken bits of that into my own morning routine. Another favorite is Ryan Holiday,
Okay.
specifically his book, The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah, that's my favorite of all of his books.
Likewise. And I found it at a very pivotal time in my life. And I think that it's been really influential in terms of even the work that I'm doing now with relationships. And one of the core things that when I work with clients, is sharing with them that fear is your compass. The thing that you are afraid to say is the direction you need to go. Exactly.
Exactly.
Talking a lot about relational courage. Like there's four kind of different categories of courage, I believe, in relationships. The courage to ask for what you need, the courage to ask what your partner needs, the courage to be vulnerable, and the courage to address issues head on. And a lot
Mm.
of that is actually derived from Stoicism and the work and the things that I've read from Ryan Holiday and many other authors. But really drawing that through line of courage is really the key to having a really peaceful and successful relationship.
I love that so much because in my work, I talk a lot about courage, and it's all because the word itself comes from cor. Cor in Latin means heart. So the
Yeah.
fact that you're like using that as a navigational tool for relationships specifically makes total sense. That
And
is
we know
awesome.
it inherently, right? We know it for everything else we do in life, but we forget when it comes to relationship. I am the core skill that has and the virtue that we've practiced everywhere else that has made us really successful.
Yeah. I love how you have the tendency to like pull things from, let's say, business or other areas of life and say, okay, how can we apply this to relationships? Because for many people, I'm assuming it feels a lot easier in some other area. Oh, this is just what I do or how I am. It's like, oh, well, you can do that or be that in your relationship too. And I think that's really powerful. Like the perspective that you can offer people on that is really cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think that's the thing is this isn't brand new material. A lot of what I'm sharing is the reapplication to your point from other categories of life. And I think that if you can't break things down to a set of skills, you can't really teach it. And I think love and relationships are just simply a set of skills and habits that once we start practicing them, we can create anything.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the B in herb stands for beliefs. What are some of your core beliefs that fuel your drive, fuel your passion, fuel your living out your purpose? What are the beliefs that are kind of those underlying elements?
Well, we already touched on one of them, but a big one is that courage is the key to a peaceful, thriving relationship.
Mm,
A core belief that if we can lean into courage in the micro moments, that's actually not only how we build the muscle of courage, but how we create something really magical. And that is a core belief to me. The other core belief is that there's two things that make for a great life. And there's also a lot of research that substantiates this belief, but it is having a purpose and connection. And so the work that I really do is focus on one half the equation. Akshay actually focuses on the other half of the equation, which is around purpose and helping people live their worthy struggle. And I think that that's really the core belief that drives us both in many ways, is that these are the two things and that they don't have to be at odds with each other. That is a very big core belief because I think that that is something we often say, that you have to sacrifice in your work, in your passion to be able to have a really great relationship. But I believe that one actually is a force multiplier for the other. I, at my core, believe that a really great relationship can make people way more successful. And again, there's a lot of statistics that support this. 86% of millionaires are married. And I think when you have a peaceful home, you can perform so much better at whatever it is that you're passionate about.
And it makes so much sense too. I mean, yes, the statistics, but also just the idea of like, if you're coming from on a day-to-day basis, a inner stillness, a peace, you know, maybe not quiet, but at least some kind of like inner calm, because you know that that part of your life is handled,
Mhm.
yeah, then you can show up in bigger, brighter ways in all the different areas of your life because that like core foundation is already set. It's already built. It's cemented in, and now we can just rise up from there. I love so much what you were talking about though with that idea with courage in relationships. There's because Sean and I used to teach a lot from our own experience because while we had one of those like romantic storybook type of relationships, it also was challenging as hell. Like we would challenge each other to like be better and be better and be better and like hold each other to each other's greatness. One of the things we always said was love is not a game of you go first.
Mm.
And we always taught like it's a game of I'll go first. And that speaks exactly to the courage that you're talking about. Like I have to be the one to either recognize I'm being an asshole right now. So what do I need to do to clean that up? Or you're being an asshole right now and I'm not going to stand for it. So either you're going to clean it up or I'm just going to like not be around you right this second until you can get that handled. So it is a lot of courage, but it's like I don't have to wait for you to do that. I need to take the courage to do that myself. So it's exactly what you're saying. And I love that so, so, so much. Are there any other beliefs that are kind of core foundational to your life?
I think at the core, it's that we're all doing the best that we can.
Yes.
I'm a
That's so
firm
helpful.
believer that we are all doing the best we can. And when we can remember that, it gives us so much more compassion, not only for our partner, but for everyone around us, for ourselves. I like to think of it as we are all little house plants that are just bending towards the light. We're doing the best we can. And if you remember that everyone's doing the best they can, it softens your internal experience. And for me, that is a core belief that has been really profound and helpful, not only in my own journey, but in everything.
I like that so much. I want to ask you too, and this kind of goes into the whole belief game. As I mentioned earlier, my like big thing was with money, finances. That was like the main struggle of
That like
my
a core wound you would describe?
what's that?
Is that a core wound of
100%.
fear around? Yeah.
100%. Like, and what I didn't realize at first is that I thought, oh, if that's like your core wound, that's a thing that you always have to deal with. And now I don't believe that that's true, thankfully. Like we can grow
Amen.
through those, right? Grow through those things and have a completely different experience, but then come from that perspective of, oh, I've been there, done that, and then obviously help other people, our clients, etc. So I'm always fascinated to ask folks that do not have the core wound of money or finance about their money and finance because I'm like, oh, how is this for you when it's been such a interesting endeavor for me? So with your work, you know, initially you were working for other people, now you're working for yourself. I'd love to hear about not just like the entrepreneur part of the path, but the money part of the path. How is wealth? Well, let me do a two-part question. One, I want to know how you would define wealth. And then two, I want to know a little bit about that evolution in your life.
So the first question around wealth, I define wealth not just as monetary, although I do believe money is energy.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that really helped me raise my prices. I had a very successful consulting business for about 8 years. And the thing that really helped me is viewing money as energy. But I define wealth there's a lot of different types of wealth. I think there's emotional wealth, there's relationship wealth, I think there's financial wealth, and I think there's time wealth. So all of those categories is really how I define it. And for me, my relationship with money is I was a huge saver. I was definitely an anomaly in terms of I always lived well below my means. And then comes along a partner who has the exact opposite money dials and experience.
This was me and my husband.
He put all of his money into crypto, and I saved meticulously and have retirement and savings. So we joke that together we have a very balanced portfolio.
You do.
But money and wealth was a very challenging topic, like with for any couple. And so for us, it really brought a higher degree of communication to learn how to navigate. And he has brought the benefit to me of spending more extravagantly, investing in experiences and myself and things that I enjoy. And I brought to him a different sense of accounting and taking care of our taxes and filing jointly. We
Totally.
actually joke that we got married because of taxes. So the year we got together, he spent a ridiculous amount of money and I made a very good amount of money. And so we got married at a courthourse just before the end of the
So
year.
that you could like
We'd
balance
file
that out.
taxes together and balance, and we'd pay less in taxes. Some people marry for love, some people marry for money. We married for taxes.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And money has been a very interesting thing for me. And I've learned to shift my relationship from wealth to really feeling much more abundant in the way we navigate life, spend, and invest in our life. And that has been a big shift for me because as a business owner, where I was very contract based for about 8 years, 8 of the 15 years I did marketing, I was not ever going to rest on all my clients are going to stay for the next year, although they did. The goal was always to live well below my means. So I was one of the anomalies that probably saved about 75% of my income for years.
Wow.
Very much an anomaly, but I think I've built a better relationship with money actually since being in my partnership and being in my marriage because it's allowed us both to expand and grow in a really beautiful way.
I totally had the same experience because I
You
was
really?
like going into my marriage having already had all my financial challenges, like bankruptcy, all the bad things that you could possibly go through, I did. And Sean was the, as you said, the complete opposite. He would like spend everything on anything just to have fun spending money. And it would drive me crazy because I'm like, okay, somebody's got to like be the
Very
adult here.
activating. Yes.
Totally was. But to your point, we were able to like he was, crazy extreme here and I was crazy extreme here and we were able to more find that balance learning from each other. So I mean that's the most beautiful thing about relationships is coming together with all of our various different strengths, weaknesses, perspectives and then, like iron sharpens iron, challenging each other to level up. So that is awesome. I'd love to ask you too if you're open to talk about it, you
Yeah.
mentioned being sober. I'd love to hear the before and then how you got out of that because so many people are in that struggle right here and now. And it's always awesome to hear stories of people who have risen above that.
Happy to share. And for me, I definitely had a lot of alcohol abuse. I probably wasn't defined as a typical alcoholic because mine was all social drinking. But the
Okay.
amount I was social drinking was definitely on the alcoholic side of things. But it was interesting because I don't know if it was helpful or harmful that I would never get defined as an alcoholic because it was normalized. I was working in tech for about 8 years, 7 or 8 years before I started my own business. And in tech, the tech world, everybody drinks. People had bottles of booze in the office. And so I would have four, five, six, seven, eight, even as many as 10 drinks in a night. And I was so high functioning. Nobody even knew when I was drunk,
Wow.
scary part. So I was still operating, I would say, probably close to the level I am now, working very long hours, having side businesses, doing all of those things, and out drinking 4 nights a week.
Mm.
And I would only drink around others. And what I really discovered was so much of my drinking was both a social band-aid and due to the fact that I was deeply empathic and I couldn't manage my own sensitivity.
Ooh, girl, let's talk about that. Because
So
that,
many
yes,
men
I get it.
end up being alcoholics because of that.
Yep.
And it was only after I learned that I was even on the scale of sensitive and self-described. I did all the tests to say very much firmly an empath. And for me, I actually had a very spiritual experience that led me to quit drinking. I
Let's
was
share.
on I was on a trip in Mexico with a friend who was sober. I had no intent of being done drinking, and she told me the origin of the term spirit. Do you happen to know?
Spiritus, Latin.
So, the origin of calling alcohol spirits was the idea that it steals your spirit and you can be inhabited by other spirits when you are drinking.
Mm.
There was something about that that shook me to my core. I had never heard that before. I'd had no intention of quitting drinking. And that night I went to sleep and I had a dream. And I had a dream I was in this incredible space that looked like a cenote that I would visit the next day,
Wow.
being told in this dream that if I did not quit drinking, I would never reach my full potential.
Mm.
And when I woke up that morning, I made the commitment that that was my last drink the night before. And I held upheld that commitment ever since.
So just cold turkey, that was it.
Turkey, and I went to this cenote and it was the exact scene I had seen in my dream.
Ah, I love that.
And that gave me chilled me to my bones. And I made a public post on Instagram actually that I was done drinking. And I requested that people didn't ask if I wanted to grab a drink anymore. And part of that was a big accountability piece for me. And that's when, again, I ran into Dave Asprey's work, the Human Upgrade podcast, and started diving in and seeing that there was a whole community of people that were some are sober, some are not, but at least they were health focused.
Yeah.
So feeling like I was a part of something was really helpful because the opposite of addiction is connection. It's not sobriety. And I think that the power of surrounding yourself with people who are living the same way cannot be underestimated. And so I was relearning what it looked like to engage socially without alcohol. And frankly, it was easier than I thought. I just needed to be around different groups of people doing different things.
Yeah. And like there's such a shift in that right now. Also, like on top of, I mean, that's an amazing story and like so honorable what you chose in that moment to just do it. And as you know, I don't know if you were you there when Dave was speaking at the event that we were just recently at? So he asked the audience, he was like, how many of you are either not drinking anymore or drinking way less? And almost everybody's hand went up because there's such a consciousness now about that it's not actually good for you. There's so many detriments to it, beyond just addiction. It's just not good for your health.
So
So
good for your brain.
you have such a powerful story that can like add into that just so people can know one, it's possible, two, what can happen on the other side of that. So that is amazing.
You were asking about resources earlier. There was a
Yeah.
book that I ended up recommending to a number of people after I quit drinking, and everyone I have introduced it to has quit drinking.
What is the book?
Called Kick the Drink Easily by
Huh.
James Dale. And it is an older book and it's written by a wonderful British guy. You would love it. And
British accent.
yes, as a hot pink cover to it. And it really takes a different frame on alcohol as poison, and not that there's something wrong with the individual who drinks it.
Mm.
There's a lot of beauty to certain programs like AA, but they were actually developed for men. AA was developed for the male psyche.
How come that doesn't surprise me?
And this is a reframe, right? This book does a great job of reframing alcohol is the problem, not you, which is actually more often the case for women who drink heavily or drink in excess or have addiction. And he really reframes it in terms of you don't go to a party and say, hey, there's no bananas here. I can't be at this party. And just the ridiculousness of that. And there was
Yeah.
an element of humor that was really powerful and a lot of myths that were dispelled in it that I can't recommend that book enough.
Awesome. Well, for everybody watching this, I'll link to all those resources that you mentioned below so they'll have quick access. If
Wonderful.
people are interested in learning more about you, following what you're up to, what's the best place to send them to?
The best place to send them to would definitely be Instagram. I know my new last name is rather difficult to spell. So
It's not, it's actually not. Let's be clear. It's spelled exactly how it sounds.
So if you look up Melissa Nanavati, Nanavati on Instagram, that's the best place to connect. And then on YouTube, I am at Peak Performance Love. So if you want links to everything that I'm doing, peakperformancelove.com, redirects to my website that has my links to Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and happy to connect there and always happy to answer questions. Anything that comes up, even if it's about my own sobriety journey, whatever that may be, for me, my goal is to be a resource. There's a lot of things that I have grown through, and if I can offer any help to anyone on their journey, whether it's in relationship or sobriety, I'm always here to do that.
Melissa, that is awesome. Thank you from my whole audience and from me. And this was super fun. I'm really delighted to have gotten to connect with you a little bit more. And thank you so much for being on the show.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.